Well, Democratic voters have been pretty energized this season. They haven't hidden it. They spent the last 6 months setting fire to things. Fast food franchises, courthouses, stores, destroying retail outlets, small businesses, terrorizing people in their homes, stealing everything they can get their hands on. Why do they do this? Because they're mad they're not in charge. Now, you're not allowed to say any of that, even though it's obvious. You're supposed to pretend, along with Michelle Obama, that it's Donald Trump's fault and hidden white supremacists probably working with the Russians. In places like Washington, D.C., they voted 96% for Hillary. Yeah, it's the white supremacists, of course. But in places like L.A. and Portland and Seattle, business owners know exactly what's going on, and they know exactly what Joe Biden's voters will do if their candidate loses. So they spent the weekend getting ready for the violence of the Democratic left, as if they were preparing for a Category 5 hurricane. Watch.
Ahead of Election Day, businesses in downtown Los Angeles are boarding up as a precaution. Some downtown stores have been boarded up for weeks.
The university's Office of Student Rights and Responsibilities releasing this campus advisory to students, asking them not only to plan for increased traffic, but other personal safety tips. Don't allow strangers into buildings. Take shelter if there's a disturbance. All of this due to what's being called possible unrest near the university on or around Election Day.
Many businesses are preparing for what we saw in 2016 and even earlier this summer. In their preparation, more businesses are hiring security.
Like other nearby Lodo businesses, Zach Monks has already boarded up windows ahead of Election Day. His store has been looted 4 times in the last 5 months. He estimates thieves made off with about $140,000 worth of merchandise.
Unrest. Who's causing all this unrest? Kind of a mystery, isn't it? Take a look at the places it's happening. Portland, Washington, D.C., Seattle. Look at the places it's not happening. Let's see. Waco, Texas, the west coast of Florida, Redding, California. Notice a theme here? It's the places where there are no conservatives at all that are bracing for unrest. Because it's not conservatives who are doing it. No, it's not white supremacists. It's not the Russians. It's Joe Biden voters who are, in effect, threatening to burn it down if they don't get what they want. So the same people who are telling you that Trump will never accept the outcome of the election are implying that they won't accept the outcome of the election. It doesn't go their way, and they will commit violence. Everyone knows this. Everyone's pretending it's not true. Let's stop the line. In New York City today, Joe Biden's voters made it very clear what they plan to do.
Only good cop, the dead cop! Only good cop, the dead cop! Your mother! Grandparents! I hope all of your children get raped and killed! You're disgrace!
Yeah, just well-balanced, emotionally healthy people. Hope all of your, we're not even going to repeat what they said. You saw it on the screen. It's just absolutely too ugly. You're definitely not going to see it on other channels because they've suppressed it. They don't want you to see that. Drew Hernandez doesn't care what they want. He waded into the crowd and shot the video you just saw, and a lot more like it. He's an investigative reporter at the Tatum Report. We're happy to have him on tonight. Drew, thanks so much for coming on. Tell us what you saw.
So today, Tucker, thank you for having me again. Today, Antifa and Black Lives Matter were trying to counter-protest the Trump caravan that was actually supposed to be at the park with Madison Square Park, but it turns out they actually went to the Cuomo Bridge to demonstrate the Trump supporters. So it seems like Trump supporters kind of finessed Antifa and Black Lives Matter today, which is pretty embarrassing. But when they found that out, Tucker, Black Lives Matter and Antifa began to mobilize through Chelsea to an overpass. When they finally got to the overpass, there was a lot of infighting. Some of the more radical leftists and Antifa and BLM insurrectionists couldn't decide which way the revolution was going to go. Some noticed a police presence and they were like, maybe we should go away because we don't want to get arrested. But some actually wanted to stand their ground because they're fighting against scary fascist Nazis. So as they began to, they began to march again, they were marching down the street. Some of them actually were getting really violent. The police, NYPD, gave multiple warnings to disperse peacefully. They didn't listen. They stood their ground. a big brawl broke out between the NYPD and some of the insurrectionists, Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and there were multiple arrests. And then that's what you see in the footage, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Well, it is ridiculous, and only because of you and people like you do we know who these people really are. It's not just unrest, it's individuals with a specific agenda terrorizing the rest of the country. And I just want to thank you again, Drew Hernandez, for being brave enough to record this for history's sake. Truly, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Tucker. And let it be known, let the world know, Tucker, that Antifa is now on record with video evidence calling for the murder and rape of children. So thank you, and let that be known. This is what we're voting against.
That's who they are. This is not a third world country. We need to take it back from these animals, and that's what they are. Great to see you.
Absolutely.
No matter what happens on Election Day, big tech will still be here, but we know much more about their actual agenda, part of which is to limit our ability to know what's actually happening in this country so they can control us. That's not speculation. We have research on it. Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri has been leading the effort to rein in these companies. He'll join us after the break. On Friday on this show, we had a really interesting guest, Dr. Robert Epstein. He's a shrink, he's a researcher, he's an author, and he spends most of his time now studying how the big tech companies work and how they work to influence voters ahead of elections. Here's part of what he said.
We're finding very substantial pro-liberal bias in all 10, or at least 9 out of 10 search results on the first page of Google search results, strong liberal bias. In fact, in one report we generated recently, we saw more liberal bias in Google content going to conservatives than going to liberals.
So this is what censorship and propaganda and manipulation looks like in 2020. These companies are using their monopolies granted to them by Congress to determine what information you can use to cast your vote. DOJ has filed an antitrust lawsuit against Google. Will that have any positive effect for the public? Senator Josh Hawley has followed this as closely as anyone in Congress, more closely than almost anyone, probably anyone. He joins us tonight with an update. Senator, thanks so much for coming on. Do you think that we're getting closer to some kind of regulatory or legislative answer to this crisis? It is a crisis, I would say.
Yeah, I hope so, Tucker. I mean, certainly the antitrust suit that you just mentioned that the Trump Justice Department filed is a big, big deal. And one of the things that concerns me most about a Biden victory is I think they'll either shut that antitrust probe all the way down, shut down the suit, or else they'll just make it toothless, because let's not forget, these tech companies have invested enormous amounts of money in Joe Biden. They're not just in the tank for him ideologically, though they are. They've tried to buy him. I mean, they have contributed millions and millions of dollars to Biden-Harris. That is not for nothing. So that is my biggest fear, is that they'll shut down that antitrust investigation, that antitrust suit. But also, Congress, you just mentioned, Congress has to do something, Tucker. Congress has got to get off its backside, and that includes Republicans in Congress. They've got to get off their backsides, and we've got to pass legislation that will stop Google from abusing its monopoly in this way.
I don't think I've read a single news story about the extent to which big tech is supporting Joe Biden. Why do you think that is?
Well, and for one, it's because they control the information. I mean, think about this.
Right.
You now have the perfect censors in big tech. Not only do they get to decide what we can and cannot say to each other on social media, they actually control the news that we read. So, you know, it's like the robber barons from a century ago, Tucker. If they don't like a news story, if they don't want something written badly about them, they just kill the story. We saw that with the New York Post. And I think that one of the reasons reporters aren't saying very much about tech investing in Joe Biden is because they know they'll get punished by tech. They know that their stories won't get distributed. All the more reason for Congress to take action. We've got to attack this monopoly. We've got to break it up, and we've got to take away the special immunity that they get from government.
If Teddy Roosevelt hadn't broken up the trust, I think people would have lost faith in capitalism and we would have gone socialist 100 years ago. I think we face the possibility of that now if we don't get control of this.
Yeah, that's exactly right, and that analogy is exactly right. Roosevelt understood a century ago that you have to confront the trust because it's about democracy. Look, it's either the people, everyday, normal Americans, either they run the country or the corporations, the monopolies run the country. And that's the choice we have today. Is big tech going to run this country, or is it going to be the voters of America? And we've seen big tech has been brazen about this in the last few weeks. They want to run the country. They want to buy the presidency. They want to control the news. They want to control what we say. They want to run this country, and we cannot let them.
That's right. Democracy is the pressure relief valve that keeps things from exploding. And if we short-circuit it, we flirt with revolution. That's really what's at stake. Senator Hawley, I appreciate your coming on tonight, as we always do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, tomorrow is Election Eve. It's the Monday before the national election we've been talking about for more than a year. A lot is at stake in this election. You hear that every 4 years. This year, it's real. We'll explain what precisely is at stake in tomorrow's show. We hope you'll join us then, 8 p.m. Eastern.